Hello, I have been mainly on Linux for some time now, and here are some of my thoughts about running games on it. So let's start with stuff from repositories. There are native games that are packaged for the distro. They can just be installed using the manager and are easy to run. In KDE Discover, when you go to the games section and sort by ratings, the first result is a Space Cadet Pinball. Yes, that's the classic Windows XP pinball game ported to Linux. I just find it kinda ironic that the supposed best Linux game literally has Microsoft Windows in its name. That game also has a bit odd default controls for the flippers. And yes, some games come as a flatpak from FlatHub, so you could run that package on pretty much any distro you want to stop obsession. Some stuff, mostly flatpaks, you might recognize. There's Minecraft Launcher, OS, of course Steam. There are also plenty of games built for Linux too. The most well known of them must be SuperTux Kart. Basically Mario Kart with free and open source software or FOSS mascots. I have played it way before and also more recently. It has definitely seen improvements over the years. Though once again I will bring up its opening clip. A dude comes in, kidnaps the leader GNU and is like, "I will eat him unless you beat me in a kart race." What? Kinda related to SDK is SuperTux, which I think I first tried a bit more recently. This one is a platformer starring Tux, who once again goes after No Luck to rescue someone dear. And yes, plenty of these games are FOSS too. From the SuperTux games, I'm pretty sure I prefer this one. I have mentioned it before, but one of my most played games is X-Moto, a physics-based 2D motorcycle racing game. There you have to drive on tricky surfaces, get all collectibles, and then drive to the finish item without getting hurt. Just note that I've had some stuff happen with the game when downloading it through a package manager, so what I found works best for me on Linux for the latest version is going to the official site and downloading the new app image from there. Then, for example, when sorted alphabetically, the first result is conveniently 0AD, a strategy word building game that seems to be kinda known too. There are some games I've tried that maybe wouldn't exactly recommend, but there could be other gems in the repos I haven't found. Then there are the GNOME and KDE desktop game suites, including K-Patience, GNOME Mines and Tetravex, a kind of a puzzle game. Remember the built-in games of Windows 7 and before that? These suits have the feel of that. Nowadays Microsoft Solitaire is a downloadable that feels more like an elaborate mobile app that's filled with ads. It fell off hard. For some games you can get the downloads from its official website. Some, like Minecraft, have Linux or Debian packages available. Other times you may have to run Windows executables on Linux. This is where Wine comes in, so one moment, let me go get some. Actually, Wine is a compatibility layer for running Windows programs on apparently Linux, BSD, Solaris, macOS. So you have all those platforms supported there, so here's a crazy idea. How about we use Wine to run Windows programs on Windows? So on larger distros, you likely have two options to install Wine itself, either from the distro or Wine HQ repositories. A few advantages of the latter are that you get the latest official version and you conveniently get the option to just open exe files through Wine out of the box. You can also choose between a yearly stable release or the development version, updated every 2 weeks. You can do some Wine configuration through stuff like Wine config, Wine tricks, but it's a little more advanced. Haven't really managed to change anything with it. How well Wine works may depend on how you install it and the distro. A game I also play is Trackmania Nations, so I often check the state of Wine first by installing and trying to run that, and it's a bit interesting how the results differ. On the Ubuntu base, mainly with the Wine HQ release, I've had DirectX issues, so it didn't even start up. That may have also happened on OpenSUSE. On some distros based on 2404, it works with the distro package, but it gets choppier over time. On Debian I have run into some freezes, and what has happened with the distro package on that base is that the textures either didn't get installed or loaded, so the surfaces end up pitch black. Once when I tried it on Debian testing, the textures were there, but they were kinda distorted. On Fedora, I had some confusion over what Wine package works, but once I got it set up, Trackmania worked pretty fine. Though on Fedora 41, the menu suddenly started flickering. So you can see there's been stuff crashing, not opening or stuttering for me with Wine, but I think overall I perhaps had the smoothest experience on Debian, with Fedora also up there. Debian testing I am currently using. Ages like fine wine, gets better with time. Few things to note. Wine creates an entire pseudo Windows file system inside your home directory, so any app data will likely be in there. Also, Wine File Manager is app. I can't help but notice that plenty of gaming focused distros, be it CachyOS, Garuda or SteamOS, are based on Arch, a base I have tended to avoid so far. Maybe it's a really up-to-date base, though there is Nobara and Bazite based on Fedora. There is Bottles, which is running off Wine but uses a graphical interface and thus makes it easier to manage Windows applications. The program's got a dedicated environment where you can manage the Wine edition, configure Vulkan graphics and graphically change settings, so maybe I'll have to check out more of that. I'm assuming that these are some generic Flatpak based installations, so there could be less of this distro specific weirdness. For more serious gaming, you would likely want Steam, which is pretty straightforward. You can get it as a distro native package, Flatpak or a Debian package from the website. I'd recommend getting the distro package. Now, an issue I've had with Steam on Linux is that when running it from a desktop or app menu entry, it crashes and then gets stuck in this boot loop. Running it from the terminal or the installation folder works just fine, as does, interestingly, opening it by launching a specific game from the app menu. As I recall from a post I saw, it may have to do with a graphics driver. A fix for the Steam issue is turning off GPU acceleration in Steam settings. Anyway, you may notice that certainly not all games run natively on Linux. Steam has its own compatibility layer built on top of Wine, Proton. You can turn it on from Steam Settings Compatibility. Again, you can comfortably choose between a stable release, experimental, and possibly something else. I suppose Valve is single-handedly pushing Linux gaming forwards. Like, there is a Steam Deck running on Linux, so you bet getting games to run on the platform is a concern for them, and they've certainly made progress. Proton is not perfect, but I do find it more reliable than plain Wine. Now, I might have had to configure my graphics drivers to improve Proton performance on an AMD card. Type lspci-k on the terminal. One of the sections there will be about the graphics controllers. I have Radeon and AMD GPU drivers available. You switch to the newer AMD GPU driver, enable that and disable the other one at etc default grab. Note that you need root access to modify the file. Then use sudo update grab or this if you're not on a Debian distro like Fedora. Something like the Deltarion demo has not really worked for me without the new driver, I think. For something like Counter-Strike, I remember that to get it running more smoothly, I switched to AMD GPU, used Proton Experimental and ran it in an X11 session. Well, I've had Portal 2 lagging and I remember it working alright on Windows. You can visit ProtonDB to check Linux compatibility with reviews of any Steam game. A common reported issue is anti-cheat. multiplayer games straight up refusing Linux players because of the cheat detection software not working very well with that. We have this thing with Apex Legends. And my equipment, like controllers and such, is detected on Linux and works properly as it would do on Windows. So my headset mic only works right after startup, like not after unplugging it or recovering from sleep. But I had to update drivers on Windows for it to even be detected. So how to conclude? Linux gaming is definitely in a better state than it was some years ago. Along with games made specifically for it, compatibility with Windows software is evolving, though there can be some hoops still. So some stuff has actually better performance on Linux, while others still on Windows. I brought out some issues and some of them I believe are fair. To be frank with you and myself, some stuff I had here could maybe be aided by getting a new computer. Thanks for watching.